What's up guys, Eric Oakley here. We're here for Physics of Flight version 3. On this episode of Physics of Flight, we're gonna be focusing on forehands. Having a forehand allows you to use your body in a different way to get the disc to finish in the opposite direction it normally does for a backhand drive. This is very, very important, especially when the hole is shaped from left to right for a right-handed player. It becomes a lot more easy for you to hit your target and get the disc to naturally move to the basket and not fight you. So with that, we're going to be talking about the grip, your footwork and form and how that should work. And we're going to talk about the different shots you can throw with the forehand. Grip on a forehand is really important. Having a good grip allows you to use less energy and allow the disc to fly more naturally. Some things that I like to focus on, and the biggest thing is the tuck. What I mean by the tuck is really focusing on getting the disc tucked in to this cup of your hand. When you have that, you have a lot more surface area on the disc and you have a solid grip. Now, whenever the disc releases from your hand, you're going to get a little more acting against the disc to get it spinning and moving it in the direction you want. Also, it becomes really, really easy to control that nose angle when it's in there and control the angles. The disc isn't going to be flopping out of your hand. With the forehand grip, there are a lot of different ways to actually hold the disc. Find what works for you, and we'll start with a few of them. I use a modified fan grip with the third finger added to the rim, just for stability. More people will tuck that third finger under and have a fan. You can fan it out at wherever you want. You can stack them up. That pulls us to another grip, is the stacked grip, where you really just focus on keeping those fingers stacked together and trusting that that's where you're gonna generate your power. I've even heard of power grips where the fingers end up being tucked and you get them in there nice and easy like that. It's all preference. If you put it in your hand, whatever you go to first, use it. So with the grip, you want the pads to be pushed more on an angle towards the edge of the rim. You don't want them just to be laying flat up against it. You want to be pulling them in towards the rim, similar to a backhand where we tuck those fingers up under that rim on a power grip. Same thing for that sidearm. You want them to have a slight angle to be pushed into the rim, and it allows you to drive the disc more forward on release. When gripping a disc for a forehand, generally more people will lean towards a flatter disc. It's a lot more comfortable because the dome, if the disc has dome, your fingers actually kind of come up a little bit more, and we don't want that. We want it to be flush in there, and we can allow the disc to be released smooth. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't sidearm domey discs. If you can learn to use those, they tend to have a little bit more glide, and you can make it and work it to your advantage. Now, I would suggest shying away from using one finger. I've actually heard that a lot. Shy away from that a little bit, but if you need that to be consistent, go for it. But having that extra bit of surface area on the disc is going to allow for you to have a lot more consistency when releasing that forehand. And that's really what we want when we're out there throwing. Because if we're going to power up and we're going to work the disc, we want it to come out smooth and work for us. And that really starts with the grip. Moving on to the form portion of the sidearm, we really want to focus on how athletic this motion is. It's pretty natural to most players. That's why you'll see them lean with that as they first start playing, because it's really easy to gain distance because it's such an athletic motion. Now, with a natural sidearm throw in disc golf or forehand throw in disc golf, it actually kind of goes against a lot of what we've learned in those other sports. We really turn the wrist and follow through. In a lot of other sports we play, it's like tennis is a great example, football and baseball come to mind, where in disc golf it's less and everything is trying to stay up and palm up. We don't want to really follow through until we're long after the disc has released from our hand. So that's where it starts to differentiate from that athletic motion. So we're gonna start with footwork. This is incredibly important for the sidearm throw because we want to be able to incorporate the momentum we build up from back to front and allow that to go into the disc and save our body. That's the biggest part about throwing, no matter what you're doing, overhands or backhands, but it's incredibly important when it comes to the forehand. Trusting that momentum you've generated is now going to be put into the disc and allow it to eject and fly where you need it to. So there are a couple different ways to that footwork, and the most common ways you see are the walk up, the hop, and then the shuffle. I personally use the shuffle because it's what works for me, but you'll see a lot of top pros do these different things. So with Danny, we're gonna use him as an example of a walk up, a hop, and then I'll throw the shuffle.
It's probably best if you do that one.
Yeah. So one of the best things about the walk up is that it allows you to just stay on that line and get yourself moving into the throw. There's no right or wrong way to this, but it's really just about what feels comfortable and what allows you to have that momentum transfer. So Danny's gonna start with us. Very simply, he starts and gets his timing down correctly. It's a very interesting if you don't do it before, but he's allowing himself to stay linear and move nice and smooth before he throws the disc outwards just in that walk up. You didn't see him run up, and that's a good enough shot to find success if that's comfortable to you. Now we'll move on to the hop, and this one's a little more different because what it does, it's kind of like you're loading the shot a little bit more, where that one is just keeping the motion smooth as you release. This one, you're gonna see Danny, he's gonna hop back and he's gonna really drive. So he's gonna pull his weight back and pause it for a second before he explodes going forward. Again, the key here is the follow through forward. And we'll see that here with Danny's attempt at the hop. He stays linear, stays smooth, little hop, follow through forward, great stuff. Again, with most form and most of what you're gonna do when it comes to disc golf, it's about finding what feels comfortable. Now, for me, I use the shuffle. The shuffle for me is, toss me one. Yeah, bam. With the shuffle, all it is it's kind of like a similar X step or kind of similar to the walk up, but also incorporates a little bit of the hop. But it's just, as I'm about to load, I shuffle my feet just ever so slightly, just like that. If you've ever done any athletic sports, you warm up, you kind of get your body moving in that direction. So it's the same thing, and all it does is it helps me once I'm getting here, I know that it's kind of loading into that, allowing my weight to transfer and go forward. So nice and smooth, not running into the throw. I'm allowing myself to get everything forward. And that's how we do it. When it comes to pace and timing, we don't want to lose any of that momentum and have it shift into our shoulders leaning either direction. So keeping at a good pace, one speed is very, very important. As we are approaching, we don't want to be trying to get the speed off. That is a great way to get our timing off, and then we lose accuracy, we lose the nose angle, we lose a lot of factors here. So keeping things smooth and allowing yourself to be building that momentum and allowing yourself to release where you want it to is incredibly important. So focusing on a smooth, slow run up is where you can find success. That does nothing. As you've seen, Danny looks like a goober, but he's only showing you what not to do, which is great. So definitely slow it down, keep things smooth, allow the weight transfer to happen, and you'll find some success on those sidearms. So as I talked about when we were talking about the footwork and how we were following forward, that is incredibly important, especially when it comes to the upper body. We want that finish to go forward. We don't want it to go up unless we're throwing a higher shot, but it really goes through on the plane where we're wanting the disc to go. So remember that. Follow through forward first before you go anywhere else. Allow it to go forward, and then we can wrap around our body. When doing this, it's incredibly important to get low, get over your toes a little bit more as you're driving that. A common mistake you'll see is players will actually stand up as they throw, and now it's going to take their angle off. So if we can stay low and allow ourselves to follow through forward, we're going to find success when it comes to these sidearms. So Danny's going to stay through, stands up. The weight actually came back, so nothing really went out into the disc. Instead, it came backwards, and all he did was throw the disc, and that was, he completely lost all he built up with those steps leading up. So Danny's gonna come back over here again, and he's gonna follow through nice and easy, stay forward. He's not gonna throw it too hard, and we're gonna see the difference of watch his weight. His weight goes through the disc. That is a much more consistent sidearm throw, and that he will find more success with that shot than he will with any other shot when it comes to the sidearm. Using that upper body is incredibly important. We don't want to be having the disc too far out from our body, because that's actually going to start taxing the shoulder and the elbow. This is not what we want to be doing. You want it to keep it as tight to your body. Now, some people think tight to your body is here. That's a little too tight. You need to find a happy medium and find that middle ground that allows you to release the disc smooth enough and trust that it goes out there and works in the way you want it to. When reaching back, depending on the power of the shot, sometimes you might reach a little bit higher to help drive yourself forward. That's like a full reach back. I'm not reaching out, because then we're having to pull the arm in. It's keeping the arm at whatever tuck angle you're looking for and allowing yourself to drive forward. But on a more control shot, it's actually going to be level, and we're gonna wanna release the disc forward. So I'll show you that with some mid-ranges. So, with a more controlled shot, you guys are gonna see my wrist and my arm are not gonna reach anywhere up. It's gonna be more level, and it's gonna just send the disc nice and smooth. Now this is with a Opto Claymore, very, very, very straight flyer, a little more on the understable side, but I don't have to throw it hard, so I'm not gonna try and put too much power into it. So this is a more controlled throw. Not a whole lot of reach up, just a little bit to allow myself to be smooth and get that disc going forward. So now I have a Lucid Enforcer, and I'm gonna probably have a little bit higher of a reach back as I'm gonna try and drive the disc a lot more forward. I'm gonna incorporate a little bit more follow through to carry me to my target. Under it, sick. An important part of the forehand throw is the wrist action. When we have that wrist action, we're allowing the disc to kind of eject smoothly from our hand and allow the disc to naturally fly. Now, this is where a lot of players find problems, and that's in that wrist roll. And it is a common problem for most players because they put a disc that might be too overstable, like a Lucid X Felon, in their hands, and they try to really just rip it over, and that's really not getting you any benefits. And that's why I like to use a little more understable disc. It adds versatility. It teaches you angles, and angles are incredibly important about every aspect of disc golf. So allowing those understable discs to add to that versatility and teach you to how to control hyzer, how to control it flat, how to control pushing it over. All those will be found with using those understable discs. With an overstable disc, you really learn one thing: it goes and it finishes. So let's allow ourselves to expand that. Now, having the ability to control maybe a little bit of wrist roll on an overstable disc can help you work lines, as we'll talk about later in this video with the shot shapes. But you want to be able to do it when you need to do it. So Focusing on that wrist action will help you gain consistency and allow you to eject the disc forward in the path that you want. That's why we focus a lot on that wrist and not rolling it. A pretty common mistake is the nose angle. We see that a lot in the backhand drive, and it sacrifices distance, but it happens a lot in sidearms, especially when you have a off-axis torque sidearm that wobbles out. If the nose is up, that disc is going nowhere. It's a wounded duck, it's gone. So controlling that nose angle is incredibly important, and it's as simple. I think it's a lot more controllable than on a forehand than it is on a backhand, because you're really having to go against what your wrist wants to do, where here it's really just about turning just a little bit slightly. This is a little more natural than this, and this is what you have to do on a backhand, where just tilt it a little bit in your hand. You'll notice it if you throw a disc and it tends to want to rise almost immediately out of your hand. That's when you know you have the nose up, and you see it especially a lot in sidearms. So focusing on keeping the disc low, pushed forward, is really, really where you can help keep that disc from being nose up. So off-axis torque is actually a force that's working up or down rather than around the disc like we want. We want the disc to be moving in a flat motion, spinning as best it can, rather than doing this. When it's doing this, that's the off-axis torque, and that is probably from something we've done with our hands or our arms, or even it could even go all the way down to footwork, where we stand up and we lose it in our hips. It actually is losing distance because it's dragging through the air as it's going all these different ways, wind's catching it on every single angle. Where if we get that disc out smooth on the angle we're looking for with no off-axis torque, we're gonna get a more natural flight, and we're actually going to be able to see increased distance, and we're gonna be able to use more understable discs with less power to trust that the disc is going out that way. Now, a couple things that happen with off-axis torque is that wrist roll might be a part of it, could be grip, and a lot of the times, it's where players are trying to throw way harder than they need to. Their timing is completely off, and they're not finding success in allowing the disc to work for them. They're working against them. So when it comes to shot shapes on the forehand, you're going to be changing the disc and the angle for which you're throwing. Throwing a flex shot is very, very different from throwing a hyzer shot. So you want to be able to choose that disc accordingly to make sure you can execute that shot. The flex shot is generally used with a more overstable disc, like a felon or an enforcer. Having those discs, you can trust that they're going to fight out of the angle that you put them on and then work themselves back. That allows us to kind of work patterns in the shape of an S. We've seen that in a lot of backhand drives, but we can use it to forehands. This shot is very, very good for distance, but it can also be very, very useful in the woods. As you can see, when throwing the enforcer on a flex shot, I'm having to push it out there and get over the top of it and allow it to work itself back. I'm having to put this with a lot of power to trust that the disc will stay over and gain that extra distance. The flex shot with the felon is very similar to the enforcer. You're having to use the angle and push it over, but you can trust that it's going to actually fight out just a little bit later, because the slower speed of the disc allows it to actually hang on a little bit longer before it comes out and finishes. Moving on to a hyzer shot with a forehand, you might want actually a more understable disc, like an escape or a trespass. Even can go down to the pre-mac truth. These are all great discs that you can put out on a hyzer and trust that they're going to hold that hyzer the whole way to get you extra distance. Now, if you just want a good just work from left to right for a right-handed player, use a felon or an enforcer still in that slot, and you can trust that you can push it out there with hyzer and it's going to get very, very far in the lateral direction that you want it to go. You can see on this EMAC True throw with a hyzer, if the disc holds that hyzer line and glides itself out. It's really important on the hyzer throw to keep the disc on that angle all the way through, especially with your wrist, and trust that you're not rolling. When throwing the hyzer flip on a forehand, this is a really difficult and technical shot. But if you use it, you can use it to your advantage to really shape shots in the woods and actually gain distance with less effort. So using a more understable disc like a thief or even a claymore is what I like to use, but you can use an escape or a convict for this similar shot. It really, really helps you start the disc on a hyzer, let it naturally flip up to flat and carry very straight. This can also be worked in similar ways as a flex shot because you can actually start it on a hyzer, let it flip to flat, and actually peel to the left. That's a really technical shot, and you see that from some pros, but if you can figure that out and work that into your own style of game, you can really attack a lot of different holes. So when throwing the hyzer flip shot, I really, really focus staying low, keeping the disc on a hyzer, and trusting that the disc is going to flip itself up to flat. Beat up felon, use this for hyzer flip sidearms, great in the woods, goes very straight. Gotta start it out on a hyzer. Beat up enforcer, used for hyzer flips or holding hyzer sidearms. See what we can do with it. Very good. Anheuser forehands are generally used for get out of trouble shots, but I have seen some players actually use them off the tee. So when using those, it's all depending on how far you need the disc to go, and do you want the disc to pan out and kind of flex out late. If you want the disc to travel more to the left, you might want to use something that's slightly more understable, give it height, and allow it to work laterally in the opposite direction. This is why this is a great shot to use to get out of trouble. You can trust that the disc, you don't have to put much on it, you just trust the angle good and push it out there and trust that it's going to slowly work itself left while it has a very slow pan out. If you want it to come out earlier and actually get itself back right, step up. I like to use an EMAC Truth or a Claymore for this shot, even a Marshall. Those are great touch shots in the woods. Now, if I need it to come out, I'll use a Justice or a Felon and trust that I can push it over and trust that the disc will naturally pan out and actually maybe slide across the ground. This is a great, great shot to scramble with. EMAC Truth, I'm gonna use this for an Anheuser sidearm just to be nice and easy. Push it out there on a good angle and let it hold a while before it slowly pans out and wants to finish flat.
So while we're talking about improving our forehand technique in disc golf, it's also really important to think about your elbows and how to keep them healthy for the long run, okay? Now, why are injuries so prevalent to the elbow in disc golf? It's the highest reported injury in disc golf according to University of Arizona study on injuries in the sport. Well, if you think about it biomechanically, our elbow joint, okay, the two bones there, it's more of a hinge joint. It's not made to handle these stresses, right? So it does this, it doesn't do this very well. So what this is called on the stress in the elbow is called a valgus stress. They see it in baseball, any throwing sport, but let's just say baseball, when the hand is what we call in the layback position there, and the elbow's traveling forward first. Same thing in disc golf. It doesn't matter if the arm's up there or the arm's here. It's still that layback position. Well, think of this joint now being your knees, and you're jumping up and you're landing and you're letting your knees cave in towards each other. Your feet are about shoulder width apart, but your knees are caving in, or you're watching somebody do that. You're gonna be like, that's not healthy. That doesn't look healthy for that knee joint, like it should be caving and collapsing in like that. Well, that's the same stress that we're putting on this joint here. It's a valgus stress on the knee. This is a valgus stress on the elbow. So we have to keep these tissues healthy. We have to give enough recovery and regeneration. In baseball, they have pitch counts. Baseball pitchers can't just go out there and throw every single day at the same rate of intensity or volume. They have to give themselves recovery, and if they don't, their coaches make sure that they do, so they can get back out there and perform a couple days later with the same amount of effort and quality of pitch. Okay, we need to make sure we're strengthening these tissues. All right, there's so much that goes into it, but you got to think about your elbows in the long term. People have contacted me and said, hey, I can't open jars, I can't open doors, can't lift my kids. One guy just recently called me or messaged me and said that may even happen to have surgery because he's got a partial thickness tear in there. Okay, not trying to scare you, but I'm just saying you got to think about your elbows, because once the pain starts to flare up, it's hard for it to go away. It takes a lot. All right, so one last thing is watch your volume. Don't go out there and think you can just forehand over and over and over again. You got to let it rest. You got to keep that pitch count, like they have in baseball, keep that pitch count down. Go play disc golf strong.
Thank you guys for watching this episode of Physics of Flight on the Forehand. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to comment or reach out to Danny or myself, and we can totally help you guys fix your forehands and get you guys out there throwing a lot better. If you guys want to see more content like this, make sure you guys subscribe to Dynamic Discs. Next week, we have Robert McCall, who's going to be doing a portion of putting for Physics of Flight. So that's going to be a great, even though he's not putting with Marshall's, Team Marshall, but you're going to see some really good content there for him to teach you and help you understand how to get your putting right. Hopefully this all helped. Thanks for tuning in, and be dynamic.